got Stasi and it's been a while, hey. There are many kind of contributing reasons and I don't really want to get into it right now, but I did move house recently, and when you move house that's always a good time to kind of reevaluate what you want to keep in your life, what's worth keeping around. So I have gone through my books and there's a bunch of things that I decided I don't need anymore and that I'm probably going to give to op shops. However, I have then been that person who has had things stashed in my car for weeks and haven't taken them anywhere. On the plus side, that means that I still have them around to show off and talk about. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be doing a book unhaul, which I've never done before. And there are a number of reasons I'm not holding on to things. There are books I really didn't like, probably some unpopular opinions in there. There are books I just don't really care about that much either way, so it's not worth keeping them. And there are also books that have been on my shelves for maybe like over 10 years, definitely over 10 years, and I still haven't read them. So it's probably safe to assume that I'm not, and that I should maybe think about getting rid of them. There isn't really going to be a rhyme or reason or order to this. I've got a stack of books and a bag full of books on my floor, and I'm just going to be picking them up and going through them. Right. Yes. Alright, first up, I have a series that was actually really popular when I was a kid. A lot of people I went to school with were reading it. But I personally just never really got into it. As much as I love dragons. Eragon, Brisinga, Eldest. And yeah, everyone was reading it, everyone seemed to love it. I don't really know what it is about them that I didn't like. I've always loved fantasy, I love dragons, so you'd think it would be my cup of tea, but I'm tempted to go back and read them now because I haven't read it since then, but I don't know. I don't know why I've kept them this long when I didn't like them when I read them as a kid, so yeah. Orphans of the Carnival by Carol Birch. This was a DNF. I actually read quite a lot of it because it's the book I was taking to work with me and reading in breaks and things like that. But ultimately I just wasn't finding it particularly interesting. It's kind of, you know, that literary fiction type category where you're following, what's her name? I have no idea what her name is. A woman who, you know, has hair over her entire body, and so she's obviously treated as a bit of a freak and a bit of a freak show. And this is also like historical, like it's not, I don't remember the time frame either, but no, I just wasn't feeling it. So I have a lot of books that I bought just because they looked interesting, they were in cheap bookstores or they were cover buys. That Orphans one was one of that. This, The Witches by Peter Curtis, is another one of those books that I bought. This is one of those books I bought over 10 years ago. When I was a teenager, there were a bunch of these like $5 bookstores that were popping up. And so I bought a bunch of books then, and there's a lot of them that I've just never read. This is one of them. I don't know, obviously it has something to do with witches. Another that fits into that category is A Matter of Magic by Patricia C. Red. I actually did start this at some point and read a little bit of it. And it's about like a magician's assistant or something from what I can remember. But again, I've had it for over 10 years and I haven't read it. Again, exact same category of I bought it over 10 years ago. The Vampire Mind by Anne Rice. I've never read an Anne Rice novel before, and I've always been really into vampire media in all forms, books, movies, TV. So this is probably the reason I kind of bought it in the first place. But again, I haven't read it. If anything, I would be interested in maybe picking up Interview with the Vampire because I like that movie and that's obviously the popular one. But I don't know, again, it's one of those ones of like, I feel like I should have read this and I should have given it a chance, but I just haven't, and it's been over 10 years. Alright, now we have a kind of old school booktube darling that I really don't like. Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. You know, a YA contemporary that many years ago, this was one of the books that you couldn't go 2 steps into booktube without seeing someone talking about it. And I had problems with it. I mean, I know I've talked about before how YA contemporary kind of isn't my scene in general, but it's not that. It's I can't remember, like it was years ago that I read this and I've held on to it just because it's pretty, but that seems stupid when I have problems with this book. Particularly, I can never get behind anything that's related to cheating, especially in like a romance type novel where it's just brushed aside and not questioned at all. Like, it was cheating, and I have big problems with that, probably more so now even than when I read it. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this book. Yeah. If I Stay by Gail Forman. I read this as a teenager, I think, and I mean, I don't remember anything about it, so it clearly didn't stay with me, so why do I still have it? Dead Reckoning by Charlene Harris. This is one of the Sookie Stackhouse novels, the books that the TV show True Blood is based on. You know, vampires, paranormal stuff in general, werewolves, all of that kind of stuff. It's one of those urban fantasy series. And the reason I don't feel like keeping this is because it's the only one I have, and it's, you know, book who knows what number. And I've read it, and I've read some others from the library and stuff like that, but I feel like it's not worth holding on to one. Does that make sense? And I also feel like if I want to go back and read these, I would probably get them from my library or ebooks of them. I don't know. Betwixt by Tara Bray Smith. I think this is a fairy story. Again, it's a story I read as a teenager, I think, and I don't remember disliking it, but I also, again, don't remember anything about it, so don't feel like I necessarily need to hold on to it. Montana 1984 by Larry Watson. This is something I had to read for school way back when, and I don't have fond memories of it. I disliked most of what we were forced to read as part of English class, and yeah, I'm kind of tempted to keep it for the fact of what if I end up having to teach an English class and they assign this, but I'm also like, I really hope they don't, because I didn't like it, and I believe that there's way too many stories are assigned in school that are just about young white boys. Yeah. Wolfsbane and Mistletoe, edited by Charlene Harris and Tony L. P. Kellner. Obviously Charlene Harris is the author of the Sookie Stackhouse novels. This is a collection of short stories that are all to do with Christmas and werewolves. I've read some of them, but then again, this is a book that I've had on my shelves for over 10 years and have barely touched. So I feel like I need to be ruthless at this point, even though I love me some paranormal stories and things like that. And yeah, I just need to let go of things that I don't, if I'm not in love with it and I don't have immediate plans to read it, I probably don't need to keep it on my shelves. That's kind of where I'm at this stage. Another book that was really popular and I did not like and do not kind of understand the hype for in this case, and that's Queen of the Tearling by, who's this by? Erica Johansson? The thing about this book is it was marketed and talked about like it was a kind of traditional high fantasy, and it's not. It's a book that I don't think it knows what genre it wants to be. It's kind of technically a dystopian, but then it's got magical elements, and for some reason everyone's living like it's medieval times again. This is one of my big problems with this book was that I didn't understand it. Like in terms of like, I didn't feel like it was explained. And yes, this is the first book in a series, so maybe the world is explained better further on. If it is, someone please freaking explain to me, because I don't understand, like it's not explained what exactly happened to change society so drastically or why people came over here, but it does reference, like, I can't remember which countries it references, England and stuff like that, like the ones, our modern understanding of them. But for some reason now everyone's living like backwards, like it's medieval times again, and I don't understand why, and it's not explained. And I also don't really like the main character, and there's kind of some low-key, what am I trying to say? There's a focus on physical beauty in here that's also a bit uncomfortable. And I don't know, overall this was just a really weird, this is another one I read years ago, I remember when I was doing my masters, and I didn't get it. I didn't get why people liked it so much. I didn't find it particularly engaging, but beyond that, I just could not wrap my head around why the hell the world was the way it was, and the world building did not explain anything. It just kept dropping hints of things that made it more confusing. What genre is this? What is the world? Why has the world gone back to medieval times? Like, if you have answers, please, because I don't get this book and I didn't like it. Ghost Girl by Tonya Hurley. Again, this is one I read probably as a young teenager, and I don't remember anything about it, and I've only kept it because it's kind of pretty. But not a good enough reason to keep it, I feel. Begonia by Maria Dalvana Headley, or Headley? I have no idea. This is a book that, again, I think I saw someone talking about years ago, and then I went and bought it, and then I've never read it, and then I think I also saw some negative reviews after I bought it, and I don't know, what is this about? I think it's like magical realism, a YA magical realism, and magical realism and YA, not things that really interest me anymore. Magical realism wasn't something that ever really interested me. I think I bought this primarily just because I'd heard of it before and because it was pretty. But again, it's been sitting there unread for years. On to, I think all of the remaining books fall into the same category of books that my mum bought me that are in the middle of a series. Mum had this habit of, I was reading through so many books so quickly that she started picking up like big fantasy novels and things like that, thinking, you know, they'd take me longer, but she would never check if they were part of a series or what number of the series they were. So there were some books I actually read anyway that were like the third book in a series, and I just tried to wrap my head around it. There are also a lot that I've never touched because, yeah, I don't have the first books. This is one case of this, The Cage of Nine, Banestone's Erica Van Lustbader, a fantasy series that I know nothing about, and I think I actually have another one of these that might still be in my car. But I have two books from this series. They're massive, and neither of them is the first book, and I've had them on my shelves for over 10 years. And yeah, I don't know anything about this series to begin with. So another book that was bought for me and I've just never read, Robert Silver, I can't even tell what letter that's meant to be, but The Longest Way Home, whatever this fantasy story is, it's been on my shelves for over 10 years, and actually, they look like aliens. Like, it's a classic fantasy cover, but then these creatures look like aliens, but the home world. That makes it sound like sci-fi too. Oh, an alien world. Then I think these are the last books, unless there's still some hiding in my car somewhere, which I wouldn't be surprised. But I have INCAS, The Gold of Cuzco by A.B. Daniel. This book I actually have read, again, I think when I was a young teenager. It was something that was bought for me, and I think by my mum or my grandfather, probably mum. And I was a little shocked at the time and was like, wow, you really had no idea what you were buying me, because there are some kind, I remember there being like graphic sex scenes in this, but this is a story, again, also, this is I think like the second book in the series, not the first one, but I read it anyway, but it's set in like the time of the Spanish invading the Aztecs, and the main two characters are like an Aztec girl and a Spanish man. And that though, I then went and bought this because I saw it in an op shop a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, I've read one of those. What's this? Oh, this is book 3. So it's still not book 1, it's book 3. And I thought, oh, I read the second one, and I kind of remember maybe liking it. I don't know, it's been so long. So I thought, oh, I'll pick that up. But then I've had this sitting on my shelves for years and haven't read it. So that's the category that falls into. I think that's it. Yeah, there's some books that I'm planning on getting rid of. I don't really know what else to say. I don't remember how to film videos.